Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're putting a magnifying glass on one of the absolutely most critical, yet somehow most frequently misunderstood pieces of equipment in the saltwater aquarium hobby. I'm super excited to share this explainer with you because we are finally demystifying the protein skimmer. Specifically, we're going to figure out how to size it perfectly for your unique setup. If you've ever battled with a skimmer that just flat out refuses to tune right, or, woken up in a total panic to a stinky, overflowing collection cup, well, you're in exactly the right place. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, we're going beyond the box rating. Number 2, the bio load factor. Number 3, design and installation. And number 4, making the right choice. So, why do some skimmers cause absolute endless frustration? We really have to acknowledge this pain point right out of the gate. A protein skimmer has one main, incredibly important job, right? It removes dissolved organic compounds from your water column before they can break down into nitrates and other stuff you definitely don't want. But when a skimmer isn't sized correctly for its environment, that whole primary function just breaks down. What should be this effortless maintenance tool turns into a daily, highly annoying chore that completely ruins the aquarium experience. Now, most brands will list a recommended tank size right there on the box, say rated for 100 gallons. But here's the catch. That manufacturer rating assumes an empty, pristine glass box operating under perfect, ideal conditions. Now, compare that to your tank's messy reality. You've got a completely unique bioload, a very specific rate of water turnover, and distinct tuning preferences, like, whether you prefer to skim wet or dry. The recommended size on the box is really just a rough starting point. It's absolutely not a guarantee. So let's get into Section 1, Beyond the Box Rating. The very first thing we need to establish is your baseline, which is your true water volume. This is the total volume of your entire system, so your display tank plus your sump, minus the water displaced by your rocks, your sand bed, and your equipment. For example, a 100-gallon glass box filled with 100 pounds of rock might actually only hold about 70 gallons of water. Figuring out that true volume is step 1. But once you have that true volume, you immediately hit the next hurdle, which is rating discrepancies. You really have to look beyond that headline number on the skimmer box and check the fine print. Because manufacturers, well, they don't all speak the same language. Some quote their rating based purely on the display tank size, while others calculate it based on the total system volume. On top of that, a lot of these ratings are built on assumptions about a quote-unquote standard feeding level, standard water chemistry, or specific flow rates through the skimmer. The big takeaway here? Treat unclear ratings as highly approximate and always maintain a healthy dose of skepticism. Check the fine print to see what exactly the manufacturer is assuming about your reef. All right, moving on to Section 2, the bioload factor. Now it's time to do a little self-reflection on your own husbandry style. Are you running a heavily stocked tank? Frequent feeding, maybe some larger-bodied fish, regular organic additions like coral foods? Those systems produce a massive amount of dissolved organics, which means you'll often need to size up your skimmer to maintain a steady foam production. But on the flip side, maybe you have an ultra-lightly stocked tank. You've got fewer fish, you feed moderately, and perhaps you're using strong alternative nutrient export methods, like a really robust refugium. Now, what's really interesting and honestly kind of counterintuitive in this hobby is that bigger is not always better. Literally, no way. If you have a light bioload and you go out and buy a massively oversized skimmer, it will strip organics out of the water way too fast. And when that happens, there just aren't enough organics left to build a consistent foam head. Your tuning becomes extremely, frustratingly sensitive, the foam collapses, and your stability is completely shot. You'll basically be constantly tweaking a skimmer that has absolutely nothing left to skim. Which brings us to Section 3, Design and Installation. Because, even if you're comparing two skimmers that have the exact same tank rating on the box, they can behave completely differently in the real world based on their physical hardware. You have to compare the size of the reaction chamber, you need to look at the pump capability, specifically the air draw and the water flow, and definitely consider the intended installation style, whether it's internal, sump-mounted, or external. These little engineering details explain exactly why one skimmer might just perform bigger and create a much more efficient, stable foam than another model claiming that exact same tank rating. But honestly, even the best hardware in the world won't save you if you ignore the installation steps required for consistent performance. First, you absolutely must match the operating water level in your sump to the manufacturer's exact instructions. Second, keep the system's plumbing stable. And third, you have to avoid fluctuating sump levels at all costs. Why? Because consistency is the only thing that builds a reliable foam head. In fact, an undersized skimmer that's tuned well and installed properly will almost always outperform an oversized skimmer that's installed poorly. Let's pull this all together in Section 4, Making the right choice. This brilliantly illustrates how finding that perfect match is entirely dictated by your personal tank habits. If you feed heavily or have big fish, sure, go ahead and size up, within reason, of course. If you run a light load and have other export methods going, you're going to want to stay near the lower rating of the skimmer's stated range. If you plan to change your stocking soon, don't buy for today. Buy for your future bioload. And finally, if you just want slightly easier tuning and steadier foam output without having to make constant micro adjustments, going with a slightly larger skimmer often provides that nice little bit of headroom. So, before you go and hit add to cart, let's quickly run through some common sizing mistakes you'll want to avoid. Mistake number 1 is relying solely on that headline tank rating on the box while completely ignoring your actual bioload. Mistake 2 is assuming all systems behave identically. Remember, even tiny differences in chemistry and feeding will shift your performance substantially. And mistake 3 is forgetting that real-world tuning and a break-in period are always going to be required. Even the absolute perfect skimmer needs a little time to adapt to your system. I want to highlight this quote directly from the source material because it just hits the nail on the head. The best choice is the one that maintains consistent production. Consistency usually beats max capacity on paper. That is absolutely crucial. When you size a skimmer correctly based on your bioload and you tune it right with stable water levels, it completely transforms. It stops being this constant, irritating chore and becomes an effortless, silent maintenance tool just humming along in the background of your system. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, pretty crucial question to ponder before your next equipment purchase. What does your tank's bioload truly demand? Actually, scratch looking at the box entirely for a second. Look at your reef. Take a really close look at your fish, your feeding habits, and your specific sump setup. Once you understand what your personal slice of the ocean actually demands, you're going to know exactly which skimmer belongs in it. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you on the next explainer.